Chosen one, stop scrolling right now, because what you are about to hear is not just another message floating through the internet. This is for the people who smiled through betrayal, who stayed loyal while others played games, who gave real love to people that only knew how to use it and walk away. And somewhere tonight, the very people who laughed when they left you are sitting alone with thoughts they cannot silence anymore, because the truth they tried to escape has finally caught up to them. It is heavier than anything they expected. They thought leaving you would make life easier. They thought forgetting you would be simple. They thought your silence meant weakness. But now every quiet moment reminds them of what they lost, and while they sit there drowning in regret, you are slowly becoming everything they said you never could be, and that changes everything. There is something strange about betrayal that most people never understand in the beginning. It feels like the person who hurt you wins. They walk away smiling while you are left carrying confusion, pain, and sleepless nights, and for a while it even looks like life rewards them, while you are stuck rebuilding yourself from nothing. But what nobody tells you is this: the universe never works in a hurry. It watches quietly while people reveal who they really are, and sooner or later, every fake action, every selfish move, every lie comes back around, and when it does, it hits harder than anyone expects, because truth always waits until there is nowhere left to run, and the people who betrayed you are starting to feel that pressure now. Maybe you still remember the exact moment everything changed. Maybe it was a conversation that suddenly felt cold. Maybe it was silence from someone who once promised they would never leave. Maybe it was the feeling of watching somebody slowly become a stranger right in front of your eyes. And what hurt the most was not just losing them, it was realizing they could look at your loyalty and still choose to betray it. That kind of pain changes people. It makes you question yourself. It makes you wonder if being genuine even matters anymore. And for a long time, you probably blamed yourself because accepting the truth felt too heavy. But hear this carefully. You were never too much for the wrong people. You were simply too real for people who survived through pretending. And while you were sitting alone trying to heal, they were running from themselves. They distracted their minds with noise, with new people, with temporary excitement, hoping they could bury what they did. But no distraction lasts forever, because eventually the quiet returns. And when it does, the memories hit harder than before. Suddenly they remember your patience, your honesty, your calm energy, your loyalty without conditions. And now the same qualities they ignored are the very things they cannot replace, no matter how hard they try, because people only understand real value after losing access to it, and by then it is usually too late. There is a reason this message found you tonight, because deep inside you already felt the shift happening. You noticed your energy changing. You noticed your tolerance for fake people disappearing. You noticed how certain doors started closing while others slowly began opening. And even though the process felt lonely, it was preparing you for something bigger. The universe was separating you from people who would have destroyed your peace slowly over time, because not everyone who says they love you deserves access to your future. And some people only enter your life to teach you what betrayal looks like before your real purpose begins. Now listen closely, because this part matters more than most people realize. The people who betrayed you did not walk away because you lacked value. They walked away because your presence exposed everything they tried to hide. Your honesty revealed their lies. Your loyalty revealed their selfishness. Your depth revealed how shallow they really were. And instead of growing, they chose distance, because weak people fear anyone who forces them to see themselves clearly. You became a mirror they could not stand looking into, and that is why tension followed you everywhere you went, because truth always makes fake people uncomfortable. And maybe right now, you still wonder why it had to hurt this deeply. Maybe you still ask yourself why the universe allowed people you trusted to break your heart in ways you never deserved. And the answer is painful but simple, because if the betrayal had been gentle, you would have stayed longer. You would have kept sacrificing yourself just to keep peace. You would have ignored the signs and continued giving loyalty to people who only valued what they could take from you. So instead of whispering, the universe forced the lesson loudly, because sometimes protection arrives looking exactly like heartbreak. Picture somebody driving down a road at night, completely unaware that the bridge ahead has already collapsed. Now, imagine someone suddenly grabbing the wheel and forcing the car to stop. It would feel violent, confusing, even unfair in the moment, but seconds later you would realize that interruption saved your life. That is exactly what happened when certain people left you. What felt like rejection was actually rescue. The universe saw what you could not see yet: the hidden jealousy, the silent resentment, the fake support behind forced smiles, and instead of letting you build your future beside people who secretly wanted your downfall, it removed them completely. Here is the truth most people avoid hearing: not everybody clapping for you wants to see you succeed. Some people only stay close enough to study your weaknesses. Some people love your kindness, but secretly hate your growth. They enjoy your loyalty while hoping you never discover your real power, and the moment they realize they can no longer control you, they either betray you or disappear, because people who depend on manipulation cannot survive around someone who finally sees clearly, and that clarity inside you is growing stronger every single day. Something else is happening too. While you are learning how to rebuild your peace, the people who betrayed you are beginning to experience consequences they never expected, because running from truth only works temporarily. Eventually, life forces everyone to sit alone with themselves, and when that moment arrives, there are no excuses left, no distractions left, no lies strong enough to silence regret. And now they are replaying old conversations, old memories, old moments they once ignored, realizing too late that they lost somebody rare. And the worst part for them is knowing they may never get access to you again. Stay with this, because what comes next explains why your silence became more powerful than their betrayal ever was. For a long time you probably believed closure had to come from them. Maybe you waited for an apology. Maybe you hoped they would finally admit what they did. Maybe part of you wanted them to feel the same pain they caused you, but slowly something changed inside you. You stopped chasing explanations, you stopped begging to be understood, and without realizing it, your silence became louder than any argument could ever be, because silence forces people to face themselves without distraction, and that is exactly what they are struggling with now. The strange thing about healing is that it rarely looks powerful in the beginning. Most days it simply feels lonely, exhausting, and invisible. While everybody else keeps moving forward, you are left trying to rebuild pieces of yourself nobody even noticed were broken. But healing done honestly creates a different kind of strength. It teaches you how to survive without constant validation. It teaches you how to sit with discomfort without running from it. And most importantly, it teaches you who truly deserves access to your heart. Because after betrayal, you stop handing your energy to people who only know how to drain it. The people who hurt you underestimated one thing: they thought your kindness meant weakness. They mistook your patience for dependence. They believed your silence meant ignorance. But the truth is, you saw far more than they realized. You simply chose peace over becoming like them. And that decision protected your soul in ways revenge never could. Because bitterness destroys the person carrying it, while peace quietly rebuilds them stronger than before. And now, while they remain trapped inside cycles of guilt, confusion, regret, you are slowly stepping into clarity. Think about how much you changed after the betrayal. You learned to trust your instincts again. You stopped ignoring red flags just to keep people comfortable. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that never appreciated you properly. And even though the process felt painful, every lesson shaped you into someone wiser, stronger, and harder to manipulate. Now, when fake energy enters your life, you feel it immediately, because betrayal sharpened your awareness, and that awareness became protection. Imagine a sculptor standing before a giant block of stone. To everyone watching, it looks violent: pieces breaking apart, dust flying everywhere, loud impacts echoing constantly. but the sculptor is, not destroying the stone, they are revealing what was hidden inside all along. That is what this season of your life has been doing to you. Every painful lesson, every lonely night, every disappointment stripped away parts of yourself that were built around survival instead of truth, and underneath all that pain a stronger version of you was slowly being revealed. And while you're transforming, the people who betrayed you stayed the same. That is why their lives still feel chaotic, because people who avoid accountability repeat the same patterns, endlessly different faces, same problems, different situations, same emptiness. They search everywhere for peace without realizing peace only comes when honesty enters the picture, and honesty is exactly what they spent years avoiding. Now the consequences are showing up quietly: relationships failing, trust disappearing, loneliness growing heavier each day, because eventually life mirrors back the energy people give to others. You, on the other hand, are no longer chasing temporary validation. You are beginning to value peace more than attention, honesty more than popularity, and self-respect more than forced connections. That shift changes everything, because once someone truly values their peace, manipulation stops working, guilt stops working, fake love stops working, and the people who once controlled you begin losing power over you. Emotions completely. That is why your distance bothers them now, because they can feel the difference. They can sense that you no longer need their approval to move forward. Maybe they expected you to break completely. Maybe they thought losing them would destroy your confidence. Maybe they assumed you would spend forever waiting for them to come back, but instead, you adapted, you survived, you grew quietly without needing applause, and nothing confuses fake people more than someone who heals without begging for recognition, because your growth forces them to confront the reality they tried avoiding. You were never the weak one in the story, and here is what hurts them the most deep down. They know if they had treated you honestly, you would still be beside them. They know your loyalty was rare. They know your support was genuine. They know you carried relationships emotionally, while asking for very little in return, and now they are realizing how difficult it is to replace someone who loved with sincerity, because real people are becoming harder and harder to find in a world full of performance and convenience. There is another reason your journey had to happen this way. Isolation prepared you for clarity. When people constantly surround you, it becomes easy to confuse noise for connection. But solitude teaches you how to hear your own thoughts clearly. It teaches you what actually matters and who truly belongs in your life without all the outside influence. And although those lonely nights felt endless, they trained you to stand strong without depending on others for identity. That lesson alone changed your entire future. Most people never reach this level of awareness because they spend their whole lives trying to avoid discomfort. They stay in unhealthy situations just to escape loneliness. They tolerate disrespect just to feel included. They betray themselves slowly, hoping others will finally appreciate them. But you reached a breaking point where pretending became impossible, and from that moment, your transformation began, because the second someone values truth more than comfort, everything in their life starts changing. The universe has a strange way of rewarding people who stay genuine even after being hurt, not immediately, not loudly, but steadily. Opportunities appear clearer, people arrive with better intentions, peace starts replacing confusion, and most importantly, self-trust returns. And once self-trust returns, life becomes easier to navigate, because you stop abandoning your instincts just to keep temporary connections alive. What happened to you was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to separate you from environments that could not support who you were becoming. And although the process looked painful from the outside, it was actually preparation. Every betrayal exposed hidden truths. Every lonely season strengthened your character. Disappointment sharpened your discernment. And now you stand differently because of it, calmer, wiser, harder to deceive, and far more connected to yourself than before. The people who betrayed you are still searching for shortcuts, still trying to escape themselves, still blaming others for problems rooted inside them, while you are slowly building something real inside your spirit. and that difference will only grow larger with time, because temporary people cannot compete with someone who finally learns how to live honestly. There is something happening behind the scenes right now that you cannot fully see yet, but the people who betrayed you are feeling it every single day, because no matter how far they run, no matter how many distractions they surround themselves with, your absence keeps following them like a shadow. They thought time would erase you. They thought silence would make them forget. They thought replacing you with temporary people would make everything easier, but instead the opposite happened. Because the moment you disappeared from their life, the stability they took for granted disappeared too, and now they are forced to sit with the truth they spent so long avoiding. What hurts them most is not just losing you, it is realizing how rare your energy actually was. Because real loyalty cannot be copied, real peace cannot be faked, and genuine love cannot be replaced by attention from strangers. And now every connection they enter feels shallow, every conversation feels empty, every smile feels forced. Because once somebody experiences sincerity, it becomes impossible to fully enjoy anything fake again, and you gave them something real, even when they did not deserve it. For a long time they convinced themselves you were the problem they created. Stories to protect their own guilt. They blamed your emotions, your honesty, your standards, anything except their own behavior. Because accountability terrifies people who survive through manipulation, but eventually lies collapse under their own weight. And now, the truth is rising slowly inside their mind, piece by piece, memory by memory, until they can no longer escape what they lost. Maybe right now, you still underestimate how much your absence changed them, because from your side, all you remember is the pain. All you remember is the betrayal, the confusion, the nights spent questioning your worth. But from their side, the story looks very different. Now they remember the patience you gave when nobody else would have stayed. They remember the emotional support you offered without asking for anything in return. They remember how safe your presence felt during the moments they were falling apart. And now that safety is gone, there is a dangerous thing about losing someone. Genuine people rarely notice their value while they still have access to them, because consistency becomes invisible over time. They expected your love to always be there. They assumed your loyalty would never disappear, and because of that, they became careless. They stopped appreciating the small things that once held their world together, and now those same things haunt them quietly, because once real energy leaves, a person notices how empty everything else feels afterward. Picture somebody standing in a house during winter with a warm fire burning nearby. Eventually, they stop noticing the heat because comfort becomes normal, but the second the fire disappears, the cold becomes unbearable. That is exactly what happened after you left. Your energy held together more than anybody realized. And now they are feeling the emotional coldness left behind by your absence. And while they sit with regret, something else is happening inside you. Even if you do not fully realize it yet, your confidence is rebuilding slowly. Your instincts are sharpening, your standards are rising, and your spirit is becoming harder to shake, because pain either destroys a person or transforms them, and you chose transformation. Even during the moments you wanted to give up, that decision changed your entire future. Stay focused, because this next part explains why your comeback will affect them more than any revenge ever could. Most people think revenge means making somebody suffer, but real power looks different. Real power is healing so completely that the people who hurt you can no longer recognize the version of you standing in front of them. Real power is becoming peaceful after chaos, wise after betrayal, and emotionally free after years of manipulation, because nothing unsettles fake people more than seeing someone they tried to break become stronger without them. The people who betrayed you expected permanent damage. They expected you to remain stuck in sadness, confusion, and self-doubt, because that version of you made them feel superior. But instead, you slowly started rebuilding yourself piece by piece, and now the energy around you feels different, calmer, stronger, more grounded. And even if they never admit it openly, they notice it immediately. Think about how different your mindset has become. you know. Longer chase people who show inconsistency. You no longer beg for clarity from people who create confusion. You no longer shrink your personality just to keep temporary connections alive. And every time you choose self-respect over emotional desperation, your power grows stronger, because boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are self-protection. The universe has been teaching you a lesson through all of this. Access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. And once you truly understand that, everything changes, because you stop giving endless chances to people who repeatedly disrespect your heart. You stop confusing attachment with love, and you stop abandoning yourself just to avoid loneliness. That shift inside you is exactly why your future relationships will look completely different from your past ones. Now here is the part nobody warned them about. Your silence became their mirror. When you stopped arguing, when you stopped defending yourself, when you stopped chasing explanations, they lost the distraction that once allowed them to avoid accountability, because as long as you kept reacting, they could focus on your emotions instead of their actions. But once you became silent, they were left alone with themselves, and that is where regret started growing. At night, when distractions disappear, truth becomes louder, and those quiet moments are beginning to affect them deeply, because deep inside, they know they mishandled someone who genuinely cared for them. And that realization creates a type of guilt success, money, attention, or new relationships cannot erase, because emotional regret does not disappear through replacement. It stays hidden until silence forces it back to the surface. You may never hear the apology directly. You may never receive the closure you once hoped for, but understand this: their emotional chaos is already proof that the universe handled things in ways you could not see, because real consequences are not always public. Sometimes the punishment is internal. Sometimes the punishment is realizing too late that the person you betrayed was the very person who brought peace into your life. There were moments after the betrayal when you almost lost yourself completely, moments when the loneliness felt unbearable, moments when you questioned whether staying kind even mattered anymore. But despite all of that, you kept moving forward, and that resilience built something powerful inside your spirit, because surviving emotional pain without becoming bitter requires strength. Most people never develop. Imagine standing in the ocean during a violent storm, huge waves crashing, endlessly strong winds pushing against your body, darkness surrounding everything around you. Weaker people panic immediately. They drown inside fear. But eventually, if somebody survives long enough, they stop fearing the waves, because the storm itself trained them to stay balanced. That is what your difficult seasons accomplished. They trained your spirit to remain steady during emotional chaos. And now, while your inner strength grows, the people who betrayed you remain emotionally unstable, because external validation cannot fix internal emptiness. That is why they continue chasing temporary excitement, constantly searching for distractions, hoping something outside themselves will finally create peace. But peace built on avoidance never lasts, and every failed attempt only reminds them more of what they lost. Another truth you need to understand is this: your healing journey inspired more people than you realize, because there are silent observers watching your growth, people who noticed how unfairly you were treated, people who expected you to collapse after the betrayal, but instead watched you rebuild your life quietly, with dignity and self-respect. Your comeback is already speaking louder than words ever could. This is why the universe kept pushing you toward isolation for a season, because isolation stripped away dependence. It forced you to discover who you were without constant approval. Although that process felt uncomfortable, it created emotional independence inside you. Now you can enjoy love without losing yourself. Now you can care deeply without abandoning your boundaries. Now you can walk away from disrespect without feeling guilty. And that emotional maturity is rare. The people who betrayed you still operate from fear: fear of rejection, fear of accountability, fear of honesty, and fear controls every decision they make. Meanwhile, your journey forced you to confront pain directly. And that courage separated you completely from the energy they still live inside, because growth only begins when someone stops running from truth. Maybe you still wonder why everything happened this way. Maybe part of you still wishes things could have ended differently. But if they had stayed in your life while carrying the same mindset, they would have slowly destroyed your peace over time. And the universe refused to let that happen. Sometimes separation is the greatest protection a person can receive, even when it arrives wrapped inside heartbreak. Think about a tree growing deep inside a crowded forest. When weaker branches block its sunlight, the tree cannot fully expand, so eventually nature removes what limits its growth, not out of cruelty but necessity. And that is exactly what happened in your life. Certain people were blocking your emotional growth without even realizing it. And once they disappeared, your spirit finally had space to rise. Here is another truth that may hit deeply you. Future requires a different version of you than your past did. The old version of you tolerated disrespect too long, over-explained your feelings too often, and carried emotional weight that never belonged to you. But this new version understands something powerful. Peace matters more than attachment, and once somebody truly learns that, manipulation loses its grip forever. The universe is not finished with your story yet. Everything you survived built emotional muscles. Most people never develop empathy, discernment, patience, resilience, wisdom, and self-control, and those qualities will attract opportunities, relationships, and peace far greater than anything you lost, because what left your life was temporary, but what is coming next aligns with who you are becoming now. Meanwhile, the people who betrayed you are beginning to realize something painful. They lost someone who would have stayed through almost anything, and in a world where loyalty grows rarer, every day that realization becomes heavier with time, because eventually they will meet people who only mirror back the same inconsistency they once gave you, and through those experiences they will finally understand the pain they caused you, however, are no longer trapped inside that cycle, because your healing created awareness, and awareness changes everything. Now you can recognize red flags early. Now you trust your intuition. Now you understand that genuine love never requires constant self-sacrifice, and that knowledge alone protects you. Future, what comes next in your life will not arrive through desperation. It will arrive through alignment, because once somebody heals honestly, they stop chasing what is not meant for them, and instead they begin attracting what truly belongs in their spirit. And that shift is already beginning around you, even if you cannot fully see it, yet the comeback forming inside. Your life is not just external success, it is internal freedom. Freedom from needing approval, freedom from emotional chaos, freedom from relationships built on imbalance. And once that freedom fully settles into your spirit, nobody who once betrayed you will be able to recognize the person you became, because pain transformed you into someone far stronger than before. There is a reason your life never followed the easy path. There is a reason comfort always disappeared right when you started getting attached. There is a reason people kept revealing their true faces after you trusted them. And no, it was never because you were cursed, broken, or forgotten. It happened because your journey was never designed to keep you small. The universe kept removing what could not grow with you, even when your heart wanted to hold on. And now, as everything finally starts making sense, you are beginning to realize the pain was never random. It was preparation for the version of you that is finally ready to rise. Most people spend their whole lives chasing comfort. Even if that comfort slowly destroys them, they stay inside relationships that drain their spirit. They tolerate fake love because loneliness scares them more than disrespect. They ignore their intuition just to keep temporary peace. But your spirit was built differently. Every painful lesson forced you toward awareness. Every betrayal forced you toward discernment, and every lonely season forced you toward strength, because your future required qualities comfort alone could never teach. Think about how many times life pushed you into situations you never asked for, moments where you felt abandoned, misunderstood, isolated, and emotionally exhausted. There were nights you cried silently while everyone around you assumed you were fine. There were days you smiled in public while privately questioning whether you even had The strength to keep going, and despite all of that, something inside you refused to completely break, because even during your weakest moments, your spirit knew this was not the end of your story. The universe had to teach you the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment makes people hold on to situations that no longer serve them. Alignment teaches people how to release what damages their peace, and for a long time you confused loyalty with self-sacrifice. You stayed too long, forgave too much, explained yourself endlessly, and tolerated behavior that slowly chipped away at your self-worth. But every painful experience began correcting that pattern, until finally you reached a point where protecting your peace mattered more than keeping temporary people comfortable. Now, the same people who underestimated you are beginning to witness the consequences of losing someone genuine, because they believed your kindness would always remain available. They assumed your patience had no limits, thought your loyalty guaranteed permanent access to your life. But what they failed to understand is this: genuine people eventually stop giving chances when they realize their energy is constantly being taken for granted, and once that door closes, it rarely opens the same way again. There is something powerful about reaching emotional exhaustion, because eventually it removes the fear of losing people who never truly valued you, and once that fear disappears, your entire energy changes. Suddenly you stop begging for honesty from dishonest people. Suddenly you stop trying to convince others of your worth. Suddenly you stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours to begin with, and that transformation confuses everyone who once depended on your self-doubt to control you. Stay with this, because the next truth explains why your future will become impossible for them. To ignore the universe never wastes pain. Every tear, every disappointment, every betrayal, every lonely night became part of your preparation, because the life waiting for you requires emotional strength, not just dreams. And emotional strength is built through survival, through learning how to keep your heart open without allowing people to destroy your peace, through learning how to trust yourself again after being manipulated, through learning how to stand alone without feeling incomplete. Imagine a sword being created inside fire. The heat looks destructive from the outside, but without that pressure, the metal never becomes strong enough to survive battle. That is exactly what happened to your spirit. The pressure did not arrive to destroy you, it arrived to strengthen the parts of you that comfort left undeveloped. And now the version of you emerging from those difficult seasons carries wisdom. People who lived easy lives rarely understand the people who betrayed you are beginning to recognize this change. Even if they never admit it directly, they notice your energy feels calmer, your presence feels stronger, your silence feels heavier, because healing changes the way someone carries themselves, and fake people always feel uncomfortable around somebody who no longer reacts from pain. The emotional control they once had over you disappeared, and that loss of control unsettles them deeply. For a long time, they believed your emotional reactions defined you, but they never realized those reactions came from caring deeply. Now that your energy has shifted, they are seeing the real version of you, the grounded version, emotionally disciplined version, the version no longer desperate for explanations or validation. And suddenly they understand something terrifying: they can no longer reach you the same way they once could. This is why your comeback will affect them more than words ever could, because your growth exposes every lie they once told themselves about you. They called you weak, yet you survived emotional pain that would have destroyed them. They called you dramatic, yet your intuition was right all along. They dismissed your worth, yet now they struggle to replace the peace your presence once brought into their lives, and that realization follows them quietly every single day. Another reason the universe allowed betrayal into your journey is because betrayal reveals character faster than comfort ever can. When everything feels easy, people wear masks effortlessly, but pressure reveals intentions. Pressure reveals loyalty. Pressure reveals who truly stands beside you when life becomes difficult. And although discovering those truths hurt deeply, it saved you years of investing your heart into people who never planned on protecting it properly. You learned something most people never fully understand: not everybody deserves unlimited access to your energy. And once you understand that, your entire life changes, because you stop confusing kindness with obligation, you stop believing forgiveness means reconnecting, and you stop sacrificing your mental peace just to maintain relationships rooted in imbalance and manipulation. Picture carrying a heavy backpack for years without realizing how much weight it contains. Eventually, your body becomes exhausted. Your movement slows, your spirit feels drained. But the second you finally remove it, you realize how much unnecessary weight you were carrying. That backpack was filled with other people's expectations, guilt, manipulation, inconsistency, and emotional chaos. And once the universe forced you to drop it, your spirit finally had room to breathe again. The people who underestimated you still live trapped inside patterns they have not healed from. They continue repeating the same cycles, entering the same unhealthy dynamics, making the same selfish decisions, and wondering why peace never stays in their life, because peace cannot grow where accountability is missing, and accountability is exactly what they spent years avoiding. Meanwhile, your journey forced accountability onto you. Even when it hurt, you were forced to examine your boundaries, your patterns, your emotional triggers, your fears, and through that painful self-awareness you evolved, because honest reflection creates growth, while avoidance creates repetition, and that difference will separate your future completely from theirs. There were moments during your healing where you almost returned to old patterns, moments where loneliness tempted you to reconnect, moments where emotional pain made you question whether leaving was the right decision, but every time you resisted settling for less yourself, respect grew stronger, and now you stand in a completely different emotional space than before, calmer, wiser, more intentional, and far more protective of your peace. Here is another truth you need to hear: your future relationships will reflect the standards you finally learned to set, because people who heal honestly stop accepting bare minimum behavior. They stop chasing inconsistency. They stop romanticizing emotional unavailability, and instead, they begin attracting connections built on mutual respect, honesty, stability, and genuine care. Because once someone truly values themselves, toxic dynamics lose their appeal completely. The universe separated you from certain people because your future requires emotional clarity, and clarity cannot exist around constant chaos. If those same people had remained in your life, they would have continued distracting you from your growth, draining your energy, and pulling you back into cycles your spirit had already outgrown. So although the separation felt painful, it created space for your transformation to begin, and now the results of that transformation are becoming visible, not just to you but to everyone watching quietly. People notice how differently you carry yourself now. People notice your peace, your confidence, your emotional discipline, and even those who once doubted you can sense the shift, because authentic growth creates an energy impossible to fake.